Hello, tiny friends, and welcome to Tiny Keyhole Minis. I'm Jolene, and today is floor day. That's right, I have gotten it done. I've had some issues, but I'm there. And it's not my favorite thing to do or the first choice of material that I would choose, but it's what I had the most of. I began with a paper template of the room space, which is not very big. It's 8 inches wide by 15 and a quarter long, so not a lot of elbow room, but I'm going to make the best of what I have. And using wood means lots of cutting and sanding equals lots of cuts and splinters. Originally, I wanted to go with this floor here, and this is cardboard. It's from a previous project. It's just glued on a piece of black poster board, and I really like this technique. It's easy, it's safe, but because the rest of the floors in the Josephine house are wood, I am going to go with wood for the sake of the house. Plus, I can get, better end results with wood, right? So I have dug through this giant box of jumbo craft sticks and pulled out all the pieces that have character defects and flaws. And this piece is my favorite piece. I love the knot on it and the only piece like this. So I put a little X on it because I have something special planned for this piece. So this piece is going to be the star of the show. And the first step is to cut the ends off of these boards. So with my miter shears, I'm just going to snap all the ends off. Now you can use a box cutter or a craft knife, but if you're doing a large quantity, it's going to take a while. It's going to be tedious, and you're probably going to get tired of it or feel like you never want to do this again. The miter shears don't cut all the way through, but gives you a good head start with a nice squeeze, and then you can snap those ends right off. Now I'm going to use my needle files and a craft blade, and the key is to make these boards look a little bit more rugged and a lot older. So just a little bit of work on these is going to do the trick. But there's a lot. And then some. So to begin with, I'm going to use my craft blade, X-Acto knife, and I'm just going to start to cut out little sliver pieces, creating some gaps, maybe some slices here and there on both ends. And I'm just going to do this randomly. So this little step here is going to create a lot of detail when it comes to aging these boards. And then I'm going to go in with my needle files. Now, the needle files are very, very sharp, tiny friends, and this is definitely the wrong way to use these files. So if you're using them towards you and you're filing towards your fingers, please be super careful because I have stabbed myself like 3 times filing this way. It was easier to file that way, but after 3 times I was like, okay, that's enough, and I started filing away from my fingers, which is the correct way. I just want you all to be aware of the tools that you're using and learn how to use them properly, because it's very important to get to know the tools that you're using so that you don't hurt yourself. So don't go by what I'm doing. Go by your own judgment, but learn how to use them properly first. So this is a few of the boards and what they're beginning to look like. And I know these ones look a little bit alike, but this is all random. I don't want the boards to look identical, and I'm going to leave a handful as is. I'm not even going to touch them. So a couple steps will add a lot of detail to the final results. Now for the floor structure, I'm using a piece of mat board, and first of all, I gotta say, I cannot believe that I have cut this piece so perfect because I'm so bad at measuring and cutting that I'm super proud of myself. This piece is nice and snug, I don't even have to glue it down if I don't want to. If I wanted it to be temporary and removable, I can do so, but it's going to be permanent. I even cut a little hole for the mouse hole because I'm adding a double layer, so it was covering up the hole. So I had to cut that little section out, but I can't. I'm so bad at this that I'm super proud of myself, tiny friends. But this is a piece of mat board that came off of a giant artist drawing pad that I've had for years that I can't even believe I still have. Like, I had this thing back when I was in college as an art student, and that was so long ago. My two youngest kids were in elementary school at the time. And I don't even believe that this has made it this long, and I actually still had it, but I could not throw it away. I don't know why. I didn't know when, how, or what I was going to use it for, but I just knew I was going to need it. And it has made its way with me all these years. So just goes to show, tiny friends, if you're a crafter or you're making miniatures, you're using materials or recyclable materials, keep everything that you think you're going to need, even if you don't know why. I promise you're probably going to use it, most likely going to need it. This has been a lifesaver because I didn't even know how I was going to install the boards. I hadn't come to some final conclusions, and this was a miracle solution for me. So it saved my mental state. It's very sturdy and stable and strong, and it's going to last. So I am thankful to have had this and kept this. And again, I can't even believe that it's made its way with me all these years, but it was a lifesaver. It really was. So definitely keep things that you think, just even if you think you're going to need it. I promise you, you're going to need it. Okay, my boys are now in their 20s, so that's how long I've had this thing for. Okay, so let's talk about this piece. I felt so bad that it's taken so long to upload this video that I did a surprise reveal. So if you've seen the short, you know what this is. If not, the vision that I'm having in my head is to create a floorboard hideaway, which was very common back in those days and many years beforehand. People would stash things underneath their floorboards, and I thought the Josephine House needed one. So that is what I'm going to do. And I don't know how yet at this point, and it was a bit of a struggle because I had many attempts before the final solution, which was the most simplest solution, tiny friends. But I am realizing that these boards are a little wider than I would like them to be. And so I'm going to trim them down to be a similar size to the rest of the boards in some of the rooms. Now I did make a pencil mark in this board just to give me an idea of where I want to cut, how much I want to cut off. I'm not going to worry about it, tiny friends. I'm going to do this all randomly and I'm going to eyeball it. And it's going to help me breeze through this pile for one. But most importantly, it's going to give me the aesthetics that I need for this room. I don't want them to be all cut nice and even, and I don't want clean, precise cuts. I want them to be uneven and I want them to look all differently. So this is going to be key to getting that effect. If you're making aged miniatures, you want to, don't be perfect about it. Don't worry about your flaws and imperfections because that's what gives these pieces their details. And it relieves a lot of stress. So I'm so glad that I have the passion for the aged miniatures because I eyeball everything or mostly everything that I make and it just adds to the details. If you have a piece that you're not happy with and it's not perfect for your vision or your mind, because we can be our own worst critics, don't throw it away, tiny friends. Add some age to it. Age that little imperfected piece that you're not happy with, and I promise you, you are going to be surprised with those results and you're going to be more happier with it. And then you have a nice little aged piece that you can display, even if that's not the aesthetics that you're going with. Okay, I'm going to use my miter shears and a box cutter. And it's pretty simple to cut these down. I don't know if it's because the midsection of these sticks are a lot thinner, but it's cutting nice and easy for me. I know the ends were pretty hard and my miter shears weren't cutting through the ends, so I am thankful for that because it's making my job a lot easier. And then I'm just going in with my box cutters just to remove any excess trimmings that I need. Okay, so what I've done is divided them into piles. I have the trimmings that I've cut off. I have a couple pieces here that are not quite going to make a full board, but I'll be able to cut them down. A pile with the boards that don't have a lot of imperfections, and then a pile that have all the imperfections. And I just thought if I did it this way, then I can choose the boards from the piles as I'm laying them down so that they're not all, I don't have all of the imperfection pieces in one area. It's all random and spread out through the floor. So now I'm going to give it a sanding, a light sanding. Even though I want these boards to be rough and rugged looking, I don't want the old lady to get any splinters. And unfortunately, this is an essential part of working with wood. So just a light sanding on the areas that I've cut. And then I'm going to begin to prep the structure of the floor. Okay, a fresh batch of black acrylic and matte Mod Podge. I managed to get it on me before I even began painting, which is typical. And I'm going to give this 2 coats. I'm going to let it dry in between each coat. And this is just going to help give those gaps and spaces in between the boards some more depth and dimension and added detail. The Mod Podge will help protect the mat board while I coloring the boards with washes and water and putting them through the ringer. So a little protection is crucial. I'm going to be doing this in 3 sections. I'm using wood glue and I am allowing each section to dry before moving on to the next section with added weight. So I'm using heavy full bottles and books, and I have trimmed off the excess of the first 2 sections, and I'm to the point where I need to cut around the closet. Now you can see the different tones in the pieces, and there's a lot of different textures from the original make of the sticks, which is perfect for the creation of this floor. I haven't sanded anything yet, but I'm going to mark out where I need to cut this piece so that it fits nice. And I'm just making a little square at the end just so that it'll go right around the floorboard of the closet. And I'm going to fast forward a little more to the end of this and show you what it looks like. All right, tiny friends, you can see all the different tones of the wood, which is going to be perfect for the detail and the final results. And this little piece here, I adored so much with this little hole. It just had so much character. I had to make sure to include it on the floor. Now this piece is super sturdy. It's nice and stable. It's definitely gonna last. So I'm gonna give this little piece a dry fit, and it fits nice and snug. And now I'm gonna cut it out. And I thought I'd be able to do this without changing my blade, but of course not. So I had to stop to give myself a fresh new blade. It's always best just to start with a fresh new blade, tiny friends, especially when you're cutting through mat board or foam core board, because it'll give you nice clean cuts. It'll cut nice and smooth like butter. So after getting this piece cut out, I'm going to give it another dry fit and make sure that my piece still fits nice and snug. Lots of dry fitting when you're working on projects. Okay, putting the floor back into place, it still fits nicely. I need to trace out this area where I need to cut the original floor. So I need to cut this space out to give some added depth to the hideaway. And at this point, I was working super late and my mind was completely done. My brain was mush. And the original pieces are two triangles that form a square. And they're the same thickness as the craft sticks that I'm using. So I'm going to be using my heat gun and box cutter to cut this piece out. But once I started to pop pieces off, I realized how easy they were coming out. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just remove the whole floor. It won't take long. Began to remove the whole floor, and I got a good section of this area that I'm in right now and the whole front strip off. And then something told me, stop it. Stop what you're doing. My brain was screaming at me. It just like woke up instantly. It was like, stop it right now. And I realized that I cannot remove the whole floor. I need that added layer for some depth to the hideaway. So thankfully, I stopped what I was doing and began to glue the pieces back into place. If I had removed this whole floor, it would have been a mistake, but it would have been a fixable mistake. I just would have had an added step to this whole process and had to have cut another layer of this room floor space to add underneath the new floor to give that added depth. Okay, so I'm so glad I didn't give myself more work, and it's always a learning process. Now to the fun part. Using what is now one of my favorite shades, this Canal Cinnamon or Canal Cinnamon by Folk Art, I am going to add some water to it, and it's a pretty thick paint. But the shade is so lovely that this golden color is going to still come through. This tone is still going to come through after I put this floor through everything I do to it. You're still going to see that golden tone. I've also got some watered down brown acrylic, and I'm just doing this randomly, kind of like I did the shiplap wall. So not really thinking about it, just carefree at this point. That's really what I need. I'm going to let this dry completely before coming back to it. Okay, so it's dried. I have touched it up, and now I'm going in with black and gray washes, and I'm still using acrylic paint. You can see some of the markings where there was glue and the paint's not holding on to that, and I'm going to try to fix that. So I'm going to go in some of those areas, not all of them, but some of them with some thicker black acrylic paint. And this did not work, and it just made it more of a mess. So I had to go back in with some damage control and try and fill those spaces in, try to remove those spaces. You can see here I'm trying to resolve this little issue I'm having. So I moved on and thought, okay, I'll let those dry completely and start adding in the darker areas between the boards just to bring those parts out some more. And then I decided, all right, I'm just going to begin to cover the whole piece. And this was also a work in progress. I just kept moving forward. If something wasn't working, I would just walk away from it and move forward and come back to it. So I began filling in more of that space between the boards and bringing out those details. Now, one thing I didn't mention was I did sand the floor before painting, thinking that was going to help with that glue residue, but as you can see, it did not. I just kept pushing forward. I kept trying to do some of that damage control. I didn't mind having some of it there, but I couldn't have all of it there because it was just horrible. So going in with my final sanding, it started to disappear, and I was so thankful for that, tiny friends. So this sanding here, this one last time of sanding, really helped. It dulled down my coloring, but that's going to change in a little bit here. I didn't mind that some of the glue residue remained behind for the natural wear and tear of the floor. Furniture has been dragged across this floor, spills have happened. So natural wear and tear is going to happen, and some of that was necessary to be there. So right now I'm going with my simple solution of just adding a couple support beams, and I'm going to line them up with the level of the mat board. Don't mind that piece of tape there. That was from my previous attempts, and there was many previous attempts, but I'm just going to add these right in here and glue them to the mat board, line them up with the mat board, and this way the floorboard will be completely removable like they usually were, and also level with the rest of the floorboard. And that was it, tiny friends. That was my simple solution. And you really should have seen me, because I just kept seeing in my head that the board needed hinges. And so I made several attempts at trying to add hinges to this board, and it just wasn't working out. And I don't know why I was seeing hinges, but sometimes we have this idea and we're not always sure on how we're going to get there. Sometimes we just don't know how to get there, but this is where I want to say, don't get discouraged. Keep going, keep moving forward, keep trying, try everything you can. You're going to get there, I promise. You don't always know how to get to the final results of the idea that you're having. Sometimes it's there and I know exactly what to do, and then sometimes there's just a lot of trying to figure it out. So, tiny friends, if you're doing something for the first time, or you're making something from scratch, or you have this grand idea, but you just don't know how to get there, just keep trying everything that you can to resolve it. You will, I promise you. The only idea that I had that was a solid, for sure idea was adding the Hideaway. I had no idea what I was going to use for the floor. I had no idea how I was going to install it. And I had no idea how I was going to color it, how I was going to paint it, what colors I was going to use. I kept going over it and over it in my head. And that's what took me so long to get to it. I didn't have any final decisions made that would help me run smoothly. But for the most part, it did run pretty smooth. For the most part. But, I just wanted to let you know. I wish I could have kept all of my attempts in. I really tried, but it just made this video way too long. And I just wanted you to see that I tried everything. I tried 2 hinges. I tried 1 hinge. I tried a hinge in the middle. I tried adding wooden shims. I tried cutting out the mat board so the hinges would sink down to the level of the floorboards. I added tape. I glued that tape down. Tiny friends, it was definitely a learning process. And then all of a sudden, this simple solution popped in my head. And I was like, no way. I nearly fell out. I said, it can't be this simple. And it was. So, these things happen, tiny friends. They do. And they happen to the best of us. And they're going to happen to you too. So, just stick with it because it's worth it. All right, so here I am just coloring the wood support beams with some washes. I'm going to add some black wash right in the nooks and crannies, right where it would normally and naturally have the dirt built up and all that grime sitting right in the corners of the boards. So I'm going to add that, but I want to talk about this color. See how vibrant it is, and you can see all the details of the floor, the little bit of details that I added to the ends of the boards, the gaps and spaces from cutting them unevenly, the golden tones from that paint. Oh my gosh. And how vibrant the color is right now. It just came right to life. And that is because I used hairspray. A cheap, good old can of Rave hairspray. I love using it. It's cheap, it's a great sealant, and not only that, tiny friends, you can get a matte or a gloss finish from the same hairspray depending on how many layers and how much you're applying. at the time. So for example, for the legs on the antique cocktail table that I did the Dollar Tree transformation, if you haven't seen that yet and would like to, it's in my playlist. Those legs, those feet are glossy. I used the same hairspray. The floor here has a nice matte finish, but that color just came right back out. It replenishes, it revives, and it seals and protects. So I love using it. Try it. It's super cheap. Okay, tiny friends, so I am going to give you a quick view at what is the results of trying to remove the original floor like this. Now, I'm not worried. Don't be worried. I'm not worried. You all shouldn't be worried. I knew that I could fix this once I stopped trying to remove it. And what I did was glue the pieces back down along the front row. And as long as I had those pieces along the front row and the rest of those pieces there, everything was going to work out. So there's extra space that really should be filled in, but it's fine. It's not going to make a difference. But what I'm going to do is add some color to the wood with the washes, and then I'm going to add some additional details, and I'm going to create some support beams for underneath the floor. Okay, so going to what I'm going to do with these pieces. It's just cardstock. I've cut a few strips, and I'm going to use them for the support boards that go underneath the floorboards, just for some added detail in the Hideaway. So super quick and easy. I'm going to glue them down with some tacky glue and add some coloring to them, a little bit of detailing, and there it is. That's what they look like. I really couldn't use anything thicker than cardstock because it would start to interfere with the depth that I needed to hide miniatures in. So I had to find something as thin as possible, but a little bit thicker than regular printing paper. Okay, so it's time to install this bad boy, and I'm using my Gorilla Wood glue. I'm just going to spread it all around. I began with a popsicle stick, but ended up using my fingers to just get a nice even coat. I needed to get it all the way up to the baseboards without getting it all over the baseboards. So after I get this down and install it, I'm going to add some weight to it and let it sit overnight and come back to it. But I'm going to stage the room for you just for viewing purposes. This will only be temporary. You guys will probably want me to leave it like this because it's going to look like a bedroom, but this room is going to become the sewing room. And I'm going to talk about some of the pieces I'm going to put inside. Just for now, I don't know if some of them will remain in this room, but you'll see them in the house when I get to do photos. Okay, so this first picture is of my grandson. This was his first Christmas, and oh gosh, he was so intrigued with Santa's beard that he was fearless. He just was all about the beard and had to touch it, wanted to know what it was. So he went for it, and he was feeling Santa's beard and was so fascinated by it that he had no fear at all. He just wanted to know about the beard. So um, I thought this would be perfect to put in. I do have another one similar to this of my aunt when she was 3 that you'll see in the house later on. This is the husband of the house when he was a little boy. And you'll get to know more of his story and background as I move along and create some of his belongings that will be placed around the house as well. Okay, so here's a photo of the old lady of the house when she was younger. And tiny friends, the next project I'm going to work on is her. I need to create her and bring her to life, and she needs a name. So I'm super excited about that. I've never created a doll, and I'm going to be sculpting her with poly clay, and I'm going to share that with you. It's going to be so exciting. Okay, so I took this photo myself. I used to work in one of those antique, old-timey photo booths, and I had my family come in one day and dressed them all up, set up the scene, and we did a photo shoot. So I thought this would be super appropriate to put in the house. This is my best friend, my lifelong best friend, her daughter, my niece, my daughter, my sister's son, my nephew. My youngest son is back here, and this is my oldest son. And the boys thought it would be comical to put dresses on, so we just rolled with it. But they look like a bunch of mountain hillbilly outlaws. It was super fun and a great memory to make. Okay, here are my grandparents. This is my mother's parents, my grandfather and my grandmother Nani, which you'll also see up in the attic when I get to the attic on a vintage screen that I made with the projector from 1930's Minis. My grandfather served in the Korean War, and he planned to come home and take my grandmother and the kids and moved to Puerto Rico, but he never came home from the war. He was MIA, so she had to move on without him. But I always thought that he looked like Desi Arnaz. He was so handsome. Originally from Puerto Rico, and so I definitely had to honor them. So they will be in, I believe, the bedroom of the house. I just feel like that's more of a sacred place for them to be. This is a photo of my mother's family, my grandmother's sister and mother. So my Aunt Barb, my great Aunt Barb, and my great grandmother, Gram. Now, Gram was a very sweet woman, and her husband was a musician who left her with 6 kids to raise on her own. So she was a very strong woman, and I highly respect her for that. But his story and some of his history has inspired me to create some of the husband's history and background of the Josephine House. And my Aunt Barb, we always thought that she was the meanest person in our family because she was really strict when we were kids. But when I became an adult, I received one of their home movies from when they were younger and my mother and her siblings were kids. And I realized how cool she really was, seeing her interact with all her friends. And when I was a kid, she owned a couple bars, but she became nicer in her older years. Okay, this photo was sent to me because it is a spitting image of my son, my youngest son, and the way the boy is holding his cup and the way his posture is, his facial features, his nose, his ears, his eyes, everything about this boy says it is my son in a past life. And I did some research on this photo. The only thing I could find is that this is a 13-year-old boy who was a German Hitler soldier, and he was captured by the U.S. in World War II. Now, when my youngest son was born, he looked like a little old man, and I always believed he had an old soul. He used to do this thing that would freak me out because I've never seen babies do this, but he would roll his hands and fold them over together like he was up to a devious plan and up to no good. And I used to ask my mom, why does he do that? And she told me somebody once told her that meant he was an old soul, which made perfect sense to me because he looked like a little old man, and I always believed that. But I just couldn't let this picture go. So it has made its way into the Josephine house as one of the relatives. Now, this is an edition, and I have a couple of these that I made of the Farmer's Wife magazine. And since she is a farmer's wife, you will see a couple of these editions around the house. The pages are blank, but there are pages in there, and I just thought that it was really cute. I came across it while I was creating some of the miniatures for the Hideaway. I hope you all are enjoying this video so far, and if you are, please hit that like button and give it a thumbs up and let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. We're going to recap on what the floor used to look like and then move into the Hideaway. So this is the original floor, the parquet floor that was installed with the house when I received the house. It was already installed previously by the previous owners. And now there's this beautiful old rickety floor with a secret hideaway. And I'm going to talk about the miniatures that are going inside. For the first few miniatures, this is the deed to the Josephine estate, along with the husband's death certificate and his will. And I actually had to glue these in place because I didn't put sideboards up under there, so they could really actually get lost under there. So these are permanently glued down. A stash of emergency savings. That's always useful to have. Now, these keys are the original keys to the Josephine School for Girls that came with the deed of the house. And normally we would throw those away, but the old couple felt it was good luck to keep those as a piece of history of the house. This is a Farmer's Almanac from 1896 that has a bookmark in it with a poem on it that says Ode to a Cow. And here's another Farmer's Almanac. The reason why they chose to save these two in particular were because they followed these almanacs, and these were the years that they had an abundance of crops and a plentiful harvest. So they considered these to be good luck, and they were very thankful and grateful. So in safekeeping they went. Okay, tiny friends, we're going to take a look at what the room looks like with some miniatures in it. And I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank you all for subscribing. I want to welcome all my new subscribers. Welcome to Tiny Keyhole Minis. Thank you for joining me on my miniature journey. I'm so grateful and thankful that you're all here. I also would like to give a special thanks to one of my tiny friends who happens to be one of my favorite mini makers and is also a featured artist on my website, TinyKeyHole.com. Shyra from Queen City Minis. Shyra, thank you so much. You're so adorable. I absolutely love your content. I love your channel. You're so talented, and you were an instant favorite from the first day I found your channel. And this is what happened, tiny friends. Sunday morning on Super Bowl Sunday, I woke up and my subscriber number was 641. Later that evening, I went in to reply to a comment that said, hey, I was sent over by Shyra from Queen City Minis, and I thought, oh, that's wonderful. I need to go thank Shyra. And I realized that my numbers were spiked to 691, and that's like 50 more subscribers, right? And I was like, whoa, what is going on? What is happening? Because, sometimes YouTube does crazy things and we don't know why. But the next morning, I went in to thank Shyra, and I saw a post that she made, and she shared my channel with you all, and I am at a loss for words. I was so surprised, and I was like, thank you so much, Shyra. So that is the explanation for the spike in my subscribers. Shyra, I just want to say you had me at the green bean chair. I absolutely adore you. This is the best community ever, tiny friends. The most amazing and kind people I've ever corresponded with, and very talented miniature artists. We all love to inspire and support each other, and I live for that. I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm very thankful that you all are here with me as well. If you're subscribing, don't forget to hit that top bell notification button to be notified every time I upload a new project. Until then, tiny friends, you all have a lovely day, and I will see you on the mini side. Bye-bye.